Some connections feel less like chance and more like destiny, mysterious bonds that pull two souls together, not because they are the same, but because they are opposites, carrying in themselves the missing fragments of each other. The connection between super empaths and avoidants begins with the powerful and often unconscious law of polarity. Human relationships are not random. They are shaped by the unseen energies of what we embody and what we lack. A super empath is someone who has mastered the language of emotional openness. They radiate warmth, compassion, and the capacity to feel deeply not only their own emotions, but also those of others. This sensitivity creates a magnetic field around them, one that speaks silently to people who cannot access the same depths. On the other hand, the avoidant lives within an opposite pattern. Their defense is detachment, their shield is distance, and their comfort lies in self-protection. To the outside eye, this looks like a contradiction, but beneath the surface it becomes the perfect ground for attraction. The very openness of the empath is what unconsciously draws the closed heart of the avoidant, for in that openness lies a reflection of what the avoidant longs for but fears. Attraction is not always born from similarity, but from complementarity. The super empath is overflowing with emotional energy, while the avoidant is starved of it yet terrified of its intensity. The empath feels the call to give, to soothe, to nurture, while the avoidant carries an unspoken hunger for love hidden beneath layers of self-protection. The polarity works like two magnets, one charged with expression, the other with suppression, each irresistibly pulled toward the other. It is as if the soul of the avoidant whispers, "Show me what I cannot allow myself to feel," while the soul of the empath responds, "Let me heal what you cannot bear to face." Without a single conscious word, the bond is formed through this energetic tension. Yet the magnetism is not simply a matter of filling a gap in one another. It runs deeper into the very archetypal structure of human nature. Where there is excess in one, there is deficiency in another. The empath's excess of emotional giving becomes a perfect complement to the avoidant's lack of emotional receptivity. And likewise, the avoidant's coolness becomes a strange but compelling challenge for the empath, who longs to awaken warmth in the places where it seems absent. This is not just attraction. It is a call to balance, a subconscious attempt by both to restore wholeness by joining with someone who carries the missing piece of their puzzle. The magnetic polarity can feel intoxicating, especially at the beginning of such relationships. The avoidant is drawn like a moth to the empath's flame, fascinated by their capacity to love and to feel. At the same time, the empath is captivated by the avoidant's mystery, their restraint, and the sense that there is something hidden waiting to be unlocked. This creates an atmosphere of intensity where both feel that they have discovered something rare and meaningful. But because this attraction is built on polarity rather than balance, it carries within it the seeds of struggle. The very thing that pulls them together also contains the tension that can drive them apart. This polarity is not accidental. It reflects the deeper truth that people are drawn to those who awaken what is asleep within them. The avoidant's hidden yearning for intimacy stirs when standing in the presence of a super empath, and the empath's hidden wounds of rejection rise when confronted with the avoidant's distance. In this way, the attraction is not only magnetic, but also transformative. It forces both to encounter the parts of themselves they would rather keep untouched. For the empath, it is the realization that not all love can save, and for the avoidant, it is the dawning recognition that hiding from intimacy only deepens the hunger for it. Thus, the magnetic polarity of opposites is not just about desire, it is about the unconscious movement toward growth. The empath and the avoidant are bound together by invisible threads, each reflecting the other's unspoken truths. The empath becomes the living symbol of emotional depth, while the avoidant embodies the challenge of emotional restraint. Their attraction is not a mistake, nor is it merely chance. It is the timeless dance of opposites, where openness meets withdrawal, fullness meets emptiness, and in that meeting, something profound is set in motion. The bond between a super empath and an avoidant often emerges from the quiet tension between healing and hiding. At the core of a super empath lies a deep sense of responsibility for the pain of others. Their heightened sensitivity makes them instinctively aware of emotional wounds, even those that are carefully concealed. They feel a natural pull towards soothing, mending, and offering comfort, almost as though it is their life's mission to restore what is broken. For them, relationships are not casual encounters. They are sacred opportunities to connect and to help others discover the parts of themselves they may have lost or buried. This makes the super empath a natural healer, someone whose compassion runs so deep that they will often place another's suffering before their own. The avoidant, however, lives within an opposite reality. For them, life has often been shaped by experiences where vulnerability felt unsafe or intimacy became overwhelming. Instead of reaching out for healing, they retreat inward and create protective walls. They may crave connection on a subconscious level, but the moment they sense closeness, they withdraw into silence, distance, or distraction. Their hiding is not laziness or coldness, but a deeply ingrained survival strategy. It is the way they preserve themselves from the risk of rejection, engulfment, or emotional exposure. To the empath, this hiding is not seen as rejection, but as a cry for help. And so, the empath steps forward with even more tenderness and commitment, determined to heal what the avoidant is afraid to reveal. This creates a powerful dynamic, one where the empath feels called to rescue and the avoidant feels compelled to retreat. On the surface, this may look like a one-sided relationship, but underneath, there is a profound exchange happening. The avoidant offers the empath a challenge, a test of how far love and compassion can stretch. The empath, in turn, offers the avoidant a safe presence, showing them what unconditional acceptance looks like, even when they are hiding. Each plays a role in the other's psychological drama, the healer drawn to the hidden, and the hidden drawn to the healer. The empath often feels an almost spiritual obligation to stay, believing that their love might one day break through the avoidance walls. This sense of mission can be intoxicating, for the empath sees themselves as the one who can touch what no one else has managed to reach. They imagine that their patience, their endless giving, and their emotional clarity will eventually guide the avoidant back into the light of intimacy. For the avoidant, this attention is both comforting and terrifying. They are drawn to it because it touches a hunger they cannot admit, yet they fear it because intimacy feels like a trap that threatens their fragile sense of independence. The cycle that emerges is one of giving and withdrawing. The more the avoidant hides, the more the empath feels the urge to heal. The more the empath leans in, the more the avoidant feels the need to step back. This push and pull can last for years, each locked into their role, unable to break free without a deeper awakening. The empath may eventually realize that their compulsion to heal stems not only from love, but also from their own unhealed wounds, a need to prove their worth through saving another. The avoidant, on the other hand, may slowly recognize that their hiding is a prison, one that denies them the very connection they secretly long for. Thus, the healing versus hiding dynamic is not simply about two people caught in opposite behaviors. It is about the meeting of two unconscious needs. The empath unconsciously seeks to heal themselves through healing the other, while the avoidant unconsciously seeks to preserve their fragile identity by refusing to be seen too closely. Together, they form a paradoxical bond, one desperate to bring everything into the light, the other desperate to remain in the shadows. And yet, It is in this paradox, where both find the possibility of transformation, if they dare to face the truths that lie beneath their roles. The relationship between a super empath and an avoidant can often be described as a delicate and painful dance of abandonment and attachment. At the core of this bond lies the empath's deepest fear of being left behind and the avoidant's deepest fear of being consumed by intimacy. These two fears are like opposing forces, each shaping the way they interact, each keeping them entangled even when the relationship feels overwhelming. The super empath, with their heightened sensitivity and deep emotional awareness, enters relationships with a profound need for closeness. They long to connect heart to heart, to feel safe in the warmth of mutual vulnerability. Yet, when they encounter an avoidant, this longing collides with the other's instinct to step back. The avoidant desires connection too, but their fear of losing independence or being engulfed in someone else's emotions pushes them to create distance whenever intimacy becomes too intense. This dynamic often begins with an initial spark where both feel seen in unexpected ways. The avoidant is drawn to the empath's unconditional warmth, and the empath feels intrigued by the avoidant's emotional mystery. At the start, the avoidant may lean in more than usual, intoxicated by the safe acceptance of the empath, while the empath may believe they have found someone worth pouring their energy into. But as closeness deepens, the avoidant's protective instincts awaken. They pull away, needing space to breathe, while the empath senses the distance as rejection. This triggers the empath's fear of abandonment, which compels them to move closer, to reassure, to seek comfort in words and gestures that the avoidant is not truly gone. The more the empath chases, the more the avoidant retreats. This creates the push-pull cycle where neither truly gets what they want. The empath longs for closeness, while the avoidant craves security in distance. To the empath, the avoidant's withdrawal feels like emotional abandonment, a replay of wounds they may have carried since childhood. To the avoidant, the empath's pursuit feels suffocating, echoing their own fears of being trapped or losing their sense of self. The result is a paradox in which both feel misunderstood, yet neither wants to completely let go. What makes this dance so powerful is the way it touches their deepest insecurities. For the empath, every step back taken by the avoidant confirms their fear of not being enough or of being left alone. For the avoidant, every step forward by the empath confirms their fear of being overwhelmed and losing control. Yet beneath this clash lies an undeniable bond. The avoidant does not truly want to lose the empath, for they provide safety and care that is rare. The empath does not truly want to give up on the avoidant, because they sense the hidden vulnerability within them and believe their love can reach it. This tension keeps them locked together, circling around the same fears that both connect and divide them. Over time, this cycle can become exhausting. The empath may feel drained from constantly trying to bridge the gap, while the avoidant may feel pressured and defensive. Still, it is precisely in this painful repetition that the potential for growth exists. The empath is challenged to confront their own fear of abandonment and to recognize that their worth does not depend on saving someone who resists closeness. The avoidant, on the other hand, is forced to see that their endless retreat leaves them lonely and that real intimacy requires the courage to face vulnerability instead of running from it. Thus, the dance of abandonment and attachment is not simply a cycle of suffering, but a mirror reflecting what both must learn about themselves. The empath must learn to find security within rather than in constant closeness, and the avoidant must learn to trust that intimacy does not mean losing oneself. Together, they circle each other, bound by fear, yet drawn by the hope that one day the dance might transform into true understanding. The relationship between a super empath and an avoidant cannot be understood without looking at the role of projection and the way the unconscious casts its shadow onto the other. Human beings rarely enter relationships as blank slates. Instead, they carry with them hidden wounds, unmet needs, and suppressed traits that they either cannot see or refuse to acknowledge within themselves. In the case of the avoidant, much of their inner life is locked away behind walls of control and detachment. They often suppress their emotional longings, their need for closeness, and their vulnerability, burying them deep because exposure once felt unsafe. When they meet a super empath, who embodies emotional openness and expressive vulnerability, they encounter the very parts of themselves they have hidden. The empath becomes the living projection of their disowned emotional world. Without realizing it, the avoidant begins to see in the empath what they both admire and fear: the capacity to feel deeply, to connect authentically, and to remain unashamed in expressing tenderness. The empath, however, is not free from projection either. Despite their gift of sensitivity, they too carry hidden shadows, often born from wounds of rejection or neglect. Deep within, many empaths harbor the unspoken fear of not being chosen, not being enough, or being abandoned when they give their love freely. When they encounter an avoidant who pulls away just as intimacy grows deeper, they project these inner wounds onto the avoidant. They see the avoidant's distance as proof of their deepest insecurities, as though the avoidant is a mirror reflecting back all the pain of their own unresolved fears. The avoidant becomes the symbol of rejection itself, and this fuels the empath's drive to heal, to stay, and to prove that love can break through walls. In truth, both are staring into mirrors, each one showing the other the face of the shadow they would rather not confront. This projection creates a bond that feels larger than life. For the avoidant, being with a super empath can be both exhilarating and terrifying, because they are constantly reminded of what they repress. It is as though the empath's presence brings to the surface the very emotions the avoidant has spent years hiding from. For the empath, being with an avoidant feels like destiny, as if they have been called to heal the rejection and abandonment they once experienced, but through someone else. Each feels the pull not only because of who the other is, but because of what the other symbolizes in their own unconscious world. The power of projection is that it makes relationships feel charged with intensity. Both individuals feel as though they are meeting something profound and irreplaceable, when in reality they are meeting disowned parts of themselves through the other. This explains why the bond between an empath and an avoidant can be so hard to let go of, even when it becomes painful. It is not simply love that keeps them there, but the deeper need to resolve the shadow material that the relationship constantly brings to light. The empath cannot turn away easily, because to walk away feels like walking away from their own wounded self. The avoidant cannot fully leave because, despite their resistance, the empath awakens in them the emotions they secretly yearn to embrace. Yet this projection, while it binds, also has the potential to transform. If either partner becomes conscious of what is truly happening, they can begin to reclaim their projections and recognize that what they see in the other is a reflection of their own inner world. The empath can see that their need to heal the avoidant stems from their own unhealed wounds, and the avoidant can recognize that their fear of intimacy is a mirror of their own suppressed longing for connection. This recognition is not easy, for it requires both to face the very shadows they have avoided. But if they can, the relationship shifts from unconscious entanglement to conscious growth. The bond then becomes less about projection and more about authenticity, where each accepts responsibility for their own healing rather than expecting the other to carry it. Thus, the interplay of projection and shadow is the hidden current running beneath the surface of the empath-avoidant connection. It is not only attraction or need that binds them, but the unconscious exchange of hidden wounds and denied truths. They are drawn to each other because each carries the other's shadow, and in that reflection lies both the danger of endless cycles and the possibility of profound transformation. The connection between a super empath and an avoidant often carries within it the possibility of transformation, though the journey is rarely simple or easy. What begins as an entanglement of wounds, projections, and opposing needs can, under the right circumstances, become a path that forces both individuals to grow beyond the limits of their familiar patterns. The super empath, who enters the relationship with a natural tendency to give, nurture, and heal, often finds themselves pouring endlessly into the avoidant. At first, this feels like a calling, as though they have discovered a soul who desperately needs what they have in abundance: warmth, understanding, and emotional presence. But as the dynamic continues, the empath is eventually faced with the painful realization that no amount of giving can dissolve another's fear of intimacy. This moment of awareness becomes a turning point. It teaches the empath that their value does not lie in how much they can fix or rescue someone else, but in how deeply they can honor themselves. For the empath, transformation comes in the form of boundaries. They learn that love does not mean self-erasure and that compassion loses its strength when it becomes sacrifice without reciprocity. This does not diminish their gift of empathy, but rather refines it, allowing them to direct their energy in ways that are healthier and more sustainable. They begin to see that part of their compulsion to heal the avoidant stems from their own unhealed wounds of neglect and abandonment, and by confronting these wounds, they step into greater self-awareness. This shift is not about hardening their heart, but about learning to balance openness with self-protection, generosity with self-respect. In this way, the empath's journey with the avoidant becomes a path of reclaiming their own power, turning their sensitivity into strength rather than burden. For the avoidant, the transformation lies in confronting the very thing they fear most: vulnerability. The presence of a super empath gently and sometimes painfully exposes the walls they have built around themselves. They may resist at first, pulling away whenever they feel too close, but beneath their distance is often a hidden longing for connection. The empath's unwavering emotional depth becomes a mirror, forcing the avoidant to see what they are missing by hiding. Over time, if the avoidant dares to face their fear, they begin to realize that intimacy is not the same as entrapment, and closeness does not mean the loss of self. They learn that love can be a space of freedom rather than suffocation, and that allowing themselves to be seen does not make them weaker but more whole. The relationship, therefore, becomes a crucible. It burns away illusions, exposing the core wounds that each has carried silently. The empath learns that love must begin with self-love, while the avoidant learns that independence is not threatened by connection, but enriched by it. This is why, despite the turbulence, such bonds are often unforgettable. They do not leave either person the same as they were at the start. Even if the relationship does not last in its romantic form, the lessons it awakens often shape the future of both individuals in profound ways. The path of transformation is not guaranteed, however. Some empaths remain trapped in cycles of overgiving, unable to step away, while some avoidants continue to retreat into their shells, unwilling to risk vulnerability. Yet, for those who face their shadows and take responsibility for their inner growth, the relationship becomes a teacher. It reveals the hidden patterns that must be broken and the deeper truths that must be embraced. What initially felt like a struggle against one another is revealed to be a struggle within the self, a confrontation with the very wounds that have shaped their way of loving. In this way, the connection between a super empath and an avoidant is both a challenge and an invitation. It invites the empath to grow stronger without losing their softness, and it invites the avoidant to grow open without losing their independence. It is a relationship that tests, stretches, and reshapes, but through that very difficulty, it carries the power to awaken both to a fuller, truer way of being. The relationship between super empaths and avoidants is not a simple story of love and loss, nor is it merely a cycle of one giving and the other withdrawing. It is, in truth, a profound mirror of the unconscious forces that shape human connection. The empath, with their radiant openness, meets the avoidant, who hides behind walls of fear, and in that meeting, both are confronted with the shadows they have long avoided within themselves. What begins as magnetic polarity deepens into the dance of healing and hiding, the push and pull of abandonment and attachment, and the exchange of projections that reflect their hidden wounds. Yet within this struggle lies the potential for transformation. The empath learns that love cannot flourish without self-respect and boundaries, while the avoidant discovers that intimacy does not destroy freedom, but can enrich it. Their bond becomes a crucible, breaking them open so they may grow into fuller, truer versions of themselves. Even if the relationship does not endure, the lessons remain, carved into the heart as reminders of what it means to love, to fear, to lose, and to awaken. The super empath and the avoidant are not drawn together by accident. They are drawn by a deeper call, the call of the soul to grow through challenge, to face its hidden wounds, and to find balance in the meeting of opposites. And in this mysterious union, both are given the chance not only to see the other more clearly, but to finally see themselves